chance to have input into it. And 6 of them have already been signed into law by the President. The other 6 are sitting here in the Senate awaiting action by the Senate, and if passed, could go to the President, be signed into law, and we would have funded all 12 appropriation bills this year, which would be pretty historic. But right now, the Democrats have raised an objection with the DHS funding bill. Now, the ironic thing about that, obviously, is that the DHS funding bill actually, if enacted, would spend less on ICE and some of the other things the Democrats are concerned about than would a continuing resolution, which would be a bill to fund the government for the full year at current spending levels. So it spends less on ICE. It also has important reforms that Democrats have requested, including body cameras, about $20 million in there for that, a couple $1 million in there for de-escalation training, things the Democrats have said that they wanted. And of course the DHS bill not only funds ICE and Border Patrol, but it also funds FEMA and TSA and the Coast Guard and CISA, which deals with cybersecurity for the country. So a lot of pretty important stuff. So those are all things that are included in the DHS funding bill as negotiated by Democrats and Republicans, both House and Senate, and voted and passed by the House last week with 341 votes in the House. Almost 80% of the House of Representatives voted for the package that we have available to vote on here in the Senate this week. That being said, the Democrats have objected, and so we're anxious to hear what their demands are, what their requests are, what their asks are. I think the administration is willing to sit down with them and have a discussion, perhaps a negotiation about how do we move forward. But the one thing I do know, and that is that a government shutdown is not in anybody's interest. And whether it's a partial one or a 6-bill one or a 1-bill one, but even shutting down DHS, as I said before, while it doesn't really affect ICE because that got funded last year in the One Big Beautiful Bill, it would affect funding for some really important agencies of government that the American people rely on, like FEMA, particularly at a time when we've got a lot of weather-related disasters making their way across the country. So I hope we can get this thing back on track. We need to fund the government. We have a bill sitting in the Senate today that does that, that if we pick it up and pass it, can be put on the President's desk, and all 12 appropriation bills will have been done this year. So that's the question before the House, and I assume that you will hear when the Democrats come out here momentarily what their requests are, what their asks are, because we've been trying to get that now for several days. What is it that you want? And hopefully they'll be able to articulate that so that they and the White House can sit down and figure out what the path forward here looks like. But I think it's really important, if possible, to do it here, not to have to send it back to the House of Representatives, where the future of an appropriations package, I think, would be somewhat uncertain. Senator Barrasso.
Democrats are once again threatening to shut down the government, and Democrats are once again prioritizing illegal immigrants over American safety and American citizens. Remember, the Democrats are the party that want to defund the police, and now they want to defund our nation's security. You shut down the government heading into this weekend, that means no money for FEMA at a time when half of the country is under the impact of this terrible storm and another storm is coming. Shutting down the government also impacts TSA, air traffic control, all of those things. The Democrats will be causing chaos all across America. There are 6 appropriation bills in the Senate ready to be passed. The Democrats have had full input into all of them, and they have all passed the House. Overwhelming bipartisan numbers. Republicans are committed to working with the Democrats to keep the government open.
It seems like a government shutdown here, a partial shutdown, would be different, however, because the federal pay period almost gets you to the middle of the month based on the timing here. The FAA and air traffic controllers, they've already gotten a paycheck and they still have some leeway. So the impacts fundamentally would be different.
Not entirely. I mean, you still have the uncertainty that comes with it. I mean, yes, you may get this paycheck. Am I going to get the next one? I mean, the last government shutdown that the Democrats put us into, they kept it going for 43 days. And, you know, honestly, it's not necessary. Government shutdowns don't benefit anyone. I've said this many times before. And so, in my view at least, and I think the view of all of us, we ought to pass the package on the floor, fully fund the government, and move on to other things that the American people expect us to work on.
Was it responsible?
President Trump has repeatedly urged the passing of the SAVE Act, as well as many MAGA Republicans. What is the holdup in the Senate? Why hasn't that been brought to the floor for a vote? And what's your stance on requiring proof of citizenship to vote in elections?
Well, I'm for that. I've co-sponsored the SAVE Act in the past. I think my understanding is that they are still modifying the bill. It includes right now a requirement that you be a citizen to register to vote, but it doesn't include a requirement that to vote you be a resident. So in other words, if you're going to have what we call voter ID or photo ID when somebody goes into the ballot box to vote, that's not currently covered in the bill. So that's being fixed and addressed, and I think the new bill that comes out hopefully will deal with that. But I mean, at some point we'll have that vote. I'm for it. I think most of our colleagues in the Senate are, and I don't, it hasn't had consideration in the relevant committee yet. But I know there's a high level of interest among our members in getting a vote on SAVE Act. I assume that will happen.
What's responsible for the Secretary to say that Alex Plenty was brandishing a gun and was a domestic terrorist and was out to commit massacre, as other administrations have said, despite the video evidence of that incident contradicting everything they said? Was that responsible for them to say that?
I don't, again, until the investigation is complete, and I'm all for an independent, full investigation to get the facts out and to make sure there is an accounting for what happened there. So there have been a lot of statements that have been made, I think many in advance of actually having the facts in front of us. So I'm going to refrain from saying anything about that until we actually have an investigation that's been completed.
Do you see a viable off-ramp to the current situation? For instance, would you support 5 appropriations bills plus a CR for DHS while the negotiations continue?
Those all are potential. I mean, these are all hypotheticals at this point, and I would reserve optionality to consider that. But I think the best path forward, as I've said, is to keep the package intact. And if there are things that the Democrats want that the administration can agree with them about, then let's do that. Because the challenge you have, as you know, especially right now with the narrow margins in the House and the Senate, is if the bill goes back to the House of Representatives, and and who knows what happens with it over here. If that bill gets split off, and maybe other people have other ideas about other amendments and things they want to consider. If the bill changes much from what the House already passed, then you've got another steep hill to climb over there. All of this just drags things out and delays us funding the government. And the longer that it's delayed around here, obviously, we end up in another government shutdown. So there are potentially, obviously, lots of different things that could happen. But the best thing to happen is the thing that we should do right now, and that is pick up the 6-bill package passed by the House of Representatives by an overwhelming majority and send it to the President for his signature.
Mr. Lee, do you still have confidence in Secretary Noem? Should she stay in her job? And do you also have that same level of confidence for Stephen?
Well, I've said this. You guys ask these questions a lot about different members of the President's team, and I have the same answer, and that is these people serve at the pleasure of the President, and it's important that the President have confidence in his team. And so I will, allow the President to make determinations about the people that serve on his team. Thank you.
And then I'll collect your door prize.